Hi, I'm Anna Marie Cox, and you're not real. You're all fucking puppets.
Hi, I'm Daniel Dresner, and science fiction is a well-respected and thought-provoking genre.
Indeed it is. Welcome to Space the Nation, where we look at science fiction through the lens of...
Dan's theory.
And Anna's theory. Today we'll be talking about what we are thankful for in science fiction for the year of our Lord 2023. In the next
It's Spacegiving!
It's Spacegiving, that's right. In the next few weeks,
Yes.
We'll be talking about the Marvels, which I'm kind of excited about. Like, it'll give us an occasion to talk about the whole Marvel
thing. Yes, the Michigas, I believe, is the best word that you
the
could
technical
use.
term.
Right.
And also we're going to be doing our new series, Obama or Obummer, with The Sea of Tranquility, which was one of the books recommended by Obama. And for those just tuning in, to explain briefly, we have a history with Obama's science fiction recommendations.
Yes. It's a contentious history.
We tend to have not liked them very much.
Yeah,
one of them we really didn't like.
No.
Ministry for the Future. And then the other one, I think you appreciated Three Body Problem slightly more than I did.
Slightly more, but it wasn't like I was a huge fan of it. So, yeah.
They're slogs. That's the main thing.
Yeah.
And
we did Station 11, which I believe he also recommended, which we both liked a fair amount.
Oh, I loved it. I thought it was fantastic.
Yeah, okay, good.
And so I'm optimistic about Sea of Tranquility. I feel like we're kind of...
Also,
giving him a leg up in the competition, like, in order if we're starting with that.
We're giving him a leg up because this is also by Emily St. John Mandel. We're hopeful that we're going to like it. And then we're probably going to pick some things that,
we're going to pick some stuff the kind of stuff he usually picks, which is
exactly.
Like highfalutin science fiction for people that don't like science fiction. We are actually scheduled through March as far as our personal schedule goes. But we are our own bosses here at Space the Nation and can do anything we want, Dan. Anything we want. So if people have recommendations or we decide to call an audible, that is all good. So things may change. And also there's another reason things may change. Dan.
Well, partially this is because we might decide to choose something chosen by the patrons.
Yes!
Because if we get to 250 patrons, we will record an episode only for the patrons on a topic chosen by the patrons, provided they do not choose a television show, a video game, or a 9-hour movie about the Holocaust. Really,
or a television show or video game about the Holocaust.
Yes, also, well, just television show or video game. That's
about anything, right.
Yeah. But in order to do that, we have to get to 250 patrons. And might I add, if you want to become a patron, please, if you're thinking about it, go to our Patreon page. It's patreon.com/spacethenation. For as little as, I think, $3 a month, you can become a patron. You'll get early access to podcasts, get access to our monthly AUAs. You get access to our awesome Discord channel, which is really one of the best things about Space the Nation. It's the people who listen to it, and they are a wonderful, fun, truly interesting group.
The real Space the Nation are the friends we made along the way.
Yes.
And also now you get our video podcasts if you become a patron. You get to see, for instance, Dan in a tie. Like right now, Dan is wearing a tie.
Suited up right now. Yep, not gonna lie, suited up. Yep. You're catching me on my day job. This is, I think, the first time actually in a long time. So, you'll get to see what the background is like.
Yeah, it's more really, books. Yeah. It's real different from your office at home.
But they're different books, Anna.
I have a question for Bella behind the scenes. Is there also paper stacked on the floor like there is at your home office?
No, actually there isn't. Come to think of it.
I like how you kind of had to think about it. I thought you were just going to lie to me.
I did.
So, also there's another reason to become a patron, which is if you're not a patron, you have already realized by now that we have ads on the show. We are successful enough to have ads. There's a bar you have to meet in order to have people get interested in putting ads on the show, and we met that bar, and now we have ads, and so you might want to avoid them, and that is a critique of capitalism, Dan. That is right there, a critique of capitalism.
Yep, absolutely. But if you want to be an asset, Anna, you have to stay focused on work. That's all I'm saying.
Dan, did you have fun preparing for this episode?
I did have fun. But I also binged some stuff because like there were some things that I was thankful for, and there's some things that I thought I was going to be thankful for,
Ooh.
and then had to confirm that I was thankful for by watching them because I'd heard some good buzz about one of the things we're going to talk about. But yes, it was nice to recall. Like I had a warm, fuzzy feeling thinking about what were the things that made me feel grateful, and two of the three, absolutely. The third one I am also extremely grateful for, but had not actually quite finished yet. What about you, Anna?
I didn't prepare for this episode as thoroughly as you did, but I always love doing this episode. We've done it. It's the third time we've done it. We made it for Christmas last year, but it was the same idea.
We did Space Miss last year, exactly. Yes,
last year. Mm-hmm. I love Thanksgiving. It's my favorite holiday. It celebrates a bloody genocide in some ways, but also it's our only national holiday that's not about consumerism of at least. It's only consumerism on the same level that everything is about consumerism. It's not like specifically you're supposed to buy stuff. And it's also...
Or the way I would put it is you're supposed to buy food, and I approve of that.
Yeah,
food
it's
is
a
good.
Food-based holiday. It's our big food-based holidays. And we Gentiles, Dan, that's not a thing for us in every holiday.
Yeah, you know what? This is a thing, and I'm frankly critical of it. Like, this is where, like, the non-Gentiles, we like these sorts of holidays with food. But I will also say that I, as a kid, loved Thanksgiving because, as someone who was Jewish, I mean, we didn't celebrate a lot of the other so-called secular holidays like Christmas or Easter or so on and so forth. But everyone does celebrate Thanksgiving, and then
yeah, that's another reason I love it. Is that it's a non-religious, although it's whatever. It's a problematic holiday in many ways, but it's mainly about food and football.
Yeah. Yes. Also good. Football, also good.
That's true. So I am happy to do this episode. I'm happy about Thanksgiving. And of course, in general, I am grateful for doing this podcast. And this is like a meta celebration of all of those things. So
that's true. And we're closing in on the 3-year anniversary of Space the Nation, which just, holy crap. So the ground rules for this episode is, we thought it appropriate for Spacegiving to say what we are thankful for in the sci-fi world. Now, that could be because it blew our minds. It could be because it changed the way we thought about things. It just could make us happy, which, you know what? That's a nice thing, for something to have. The first time we did Spacegiving, we talked about stuff that affected our entire lifetimes. This time, it's just going to be, stuff from this past year. I believe we've each chosen 3 genre examples, and we'll share them with you. We're not going to recap them. We're not going to talk about the IR in them. We're not going to talk about the critiques of capitalism. We're just going to say why we like them. Mm-hmm. And also, just an acknowledgement, we are both very thankful for the stuff that we have already talked about at length in previous podcasts. So, for example, in my case, rereading The Shining, rereading Neuromancer, and rereading, wow, I guess I really like the Cannon Fodder episodes on it. That's a good point. I hadn't thought about that. But the point is that we're not really going to be talking about the stuff that we've talked about at length in the previous episodes. This is more stuff that we, on our own have really enjoyed. Anna, do you want to add something?
I was just going to say that I, of course, appreciate every episode except for having to watch Idiocracy.
I apologize for that, Anna.
I forgive you. And
thank you.
Although in some ways I'm really grateful we did that episode, because I think there are people who probably misremember the movie. I am happy to have offered a corrective to that. And I think I'm trying not to have, recency bias. What is it? Is that what it is?
Yeah, recency bias is where you judge things that, you think things that are more important that are more recent.
Right. But but in Shining, I think was one of my favorite episodes of the year, but also Neuromancer. Yeah. And in general, if we spend a long time talking about it, I'm always grateful for the time I spent with you.
Aw.
So we want to start talking about our stuff?
Yeah. Do you want to go first or do you want me to go first?
I will go first.
Okay.
And I am grateful for the second season of Loki.
Ah, okay, which just concluded, I believe, earlier this month.
Just concluded. Both of us really liked the first season. And I know you just finished watching the second season. So
I did.
Feel free to chime in here. But I think what I appreciated about the second season, I think, there's a whole Marvel discussion we can have.
Yes, which we will talk about. We'll talk about that next week when we talk about the Marvels, I think.
Trying to set that aside a little bit. Mm-hmm. I think it is safe to say that the storytelling aspect of Marvel, of MCU has, and
suffered maybe would be the good word.
Sure, it's become too expansive. But ironically, this series, which deals with all of time.
Yeah.
The entire universe and all of time was focused. And a small ensemble of terrific actors. Just fantastic acting. I mean, Tom Hiddleston, I think, is a treasure, and Owen Wilson, an American treasure, very much American, I think, in many ways, and actually a cool contrast to Tom Hiddleston in that.
It's true.
Dynamic.
Like, it's interesting. It really was. In some ways, it's a buddy show, and like they really do pair nicely, even though they're like obviously coming at it from very different approaches.
And it's a redemption arc for Loki, and it's just done really beautifully. And if you kind of remember, and it rewards a rewatching of Loki's turns in the Avengers movies, because he is on a specific redemption arc having to do with what he has committed in the past. And I guess spoiler alert a little bit.
I mean, yeah, we're gonna have to talk a little bit about this
I'm
stuff.
now sad that I made the friends we made along the way joke, because that is actually, in all earnestness, the upshot of Loki season 2.
Yeah.
And so I guess the reasons I'm grateful for it, in some ways, like it was just beautiful to watch. It's the art direction on that show is so thoughtful and so detailed. It was really a joy to watch. But also, I thinking a lot about friendship in my life lately, and the ways that it generates sort of thoughts about our connections to each other and why we do things for each other. And Loki, again, sort of spoiler alert, I guess, not specifics, but he goes from being, the way he thinks about friendship is like, I want my friends. That's his initial, is like, he's discovered what friendship is. And he's like, I want my friends. I want to save my friends so that I can be friends with them.
Right.
To, I am going to save my friends.
Yes. Let's put it this way. It would be safe to say that Loki the second season ends with a selfless act. We don't need to be specific about what that is, but it's a significant act. And so I agree with you. By the way, in terms of so two thoughts on this also. First, the addition in the second season of Ke Huy Quan was just a stroke of fucking genius. Yeah. I mean, he is perfect in this universe. It's a great character. I think he plays OB Ouroboros, the sort of the
Mr. Fix-It.
Mr. Fix-It of the TVA.
Yeah.
And also, I agree with you about the art direction, but also even the special effects. Like, MCU has gotten a lot of knocks, and by the way, most of them justifiably so, about the quality of these things.
Ant-Man Quantumania is like disgusting looking.
Right. This was the opposite of that. Like, I still remember, like, the first time we see, like, in the first episode of this season, someone getting into that giant, like, spacesuit or time suit, however you want to describe it. And I just thought, oh my God, that looks brilliant. It was like, I couldn't stop staring at it. And so, yeah, I agree with you on this. And also, the last 20 minutes of the last episode, really, honestly, some sort of beautiful, wordless shots that actually I found tremendously moving. So, which is not something I've said about Marvel the last year or so. And so that's where, I agree with you completely.
I watched an interview with Tom Hiddleston, someone saying, so this is it, right? Like, this is Loki's found his place. And Hiddleston laughed a long time, unusual amount of time for an interview, actually, and said that this would be actually the third time that everyone's thought that Loki was done. That he had actually written 2 emails to Kevin Feige in which he'd said goodbye, and Kevin had said goodbye. And they'd had had tears,
it was wonderful, Ron,
and you're always going to be family. And he admitted that they're not writing that third email. They're like,
that's really funny. That is good.
That it may be done, but they're just not going to say it this time because it seems to jinx it.
The one thing I will say about this show, and it's not really a critique per se. I mean, it's more my brain than perhaps the show. I think I would recommend this to others, but the thing is that, like, if you subscribe to Disney Plus, watch it. Like, this is a thing made for binge watching in a way that I'm not sure a lot of Disney was. Because I don't know about you, I literally had difficulties the first couple of episodes of this season because I had frankly forgotten details of the first season, and it was just wildly confusing at times. But nonetheless, it builds, as the show goes on.
I recommend a rewatch of the first season, or at least looking at recaps, because I also watched some interviews with the creators, and they pointed out that these 2 seasons are actually almost structured as like they go in opposite directions. It's symmetrical.
Right. Yeah.
Structure, and you will appreciate that more if you've more recently watched season 1. I want to say something about, actually it came up with Gone World and other conversations we've had about my nihilistic view of whether or not a whole universe dying is good or bad.
Yes, that's a fair point. Yeah, bring it. Yeah.
And I do tend to think that should if a whole timeline, whole universe ends, like I'm not sure if I personally would like fight against that, because it's the whole universe. Now, what they do in Loki is they get around my objection to that, which is that there is someone that will miss it. There are people that will mourn that universe, that timeline.
Yes, that's right. I remember this conversation that we had. Yes, I agree.
And because there are people that will mourn it, that to me does make it meaningful. So Loki's last act, which also beautiful, and Tom Hiddleston. The only thing that's wrong with that last bit is they do have this close up on his loafers for a little while, which is distracting.
Oh, that's true. It was a little odd. It was like, those were his shoes? I wasn't aware of that. But yes, I agree with you.
They could have not done like a close up.
They didn't need that shot. Yeah,
but other than that,
fair point.
Beautiful. Definitely recommend it to others. And Dan, it is your turn now. What do you think?
I am grateful for a show that was just completed on Max called Scavengers Reign. So the first season was 12 animated episodes, all of them less than 26 minutes. It is about the crew of a planetary freighter ship, the Demeter 227. That crew has to abandon the ship. They are marooned on planet Vesta, which might be the most fecund planet I have seen on any sci-fi property ever. I am not exaggerating when I say this. The show starts with 5 survivors from the ship, 4 humans and 1 AI robot named Levi. They are scattered in different groups and, in fact, are not entirely aware about the others, whether the others survived. Their goal is to obviously survive, to bring the big ship down, is to save those who are still on the ship, and frankly, to adapt to a planet that is teeming with both friendly and not so friendly life. I am grateful for it for many reasons, but principally, first, the world building. Because holy crap, the world building on this show is amazing. Vesta is just sort of a playground for creators Joseph Bennett and Charles Hootner. You know how like in the Star Wars universe, each planet is almost like monochromatic in terms of climate and or color, and in some cases, the politics or what have you. Vesta is the exact opposite of that. Like there is just so many different little topographies that you get exposed to. There are ecosystems that will blow your mind. Codependencies on the planet that will amaze you and also disturb you, and invented creatures that are truly delightful. The animation is just gorgeous. It's really an homage to Studio Ghibli in a lot of ways, and sort of has that look to it. There are subtle homages to various sci-fi properties. You can see, watching this, there were elements from Alien, from Close Encounters of the Third Kind, The Fly, the Cronenberg version, a couple of other sci-fi properties whose names are now escaping me. Oh, one being Annihilation, which you and I have talked about it before. And also the characters. The 4 humans and the AI who's named Levi all have their own baggage that they bring to their predicament. And over the course of the season, we see, of course, the first half of the season, we see that in flashback, and then we see it sort of develop as things goes on. I particularly liked the character of Ozzy, who, in a connection to Loki, is voiced by Wuni Mosaku. She played B-15 in Loki.
Oh, she's great.
And yeah. And also, I believe her natural accent is her. She uses her normal accent in
British. I'm guessing.
Yeah, it's British. Yes, exactly. And I would strongly recommend this to others. My only caveat is that there is some body horror. Not going to lie there. Like, you see some characters change as a result of their exposure to the planet, and they go through some stuff. That said, it's all animated, and that I think
that could totally be fine. Make it fine with me.
It does take the edge off. Let me put it this way: one of the more visceral ones is in the first episode, and if you're fine with that, you're going to be fine with everything else in the rest of the show. So I'm a huge fan of it.
Thank you for the warning. I think you and I think have in common discomfort with the body horror stuff.
Yeah. So let me put it this way: I am not comfortable with that. I like this movie, so right. I say this from a place where, or like, not this movie.
Yeah.
I'm uncomfortable with body horror. I like this TV show a lot. And I hope there is a second season.
Yeah, you've been recommending it to me, so I will probably check it out.
Yeah.
I am probably in a global minority in that I've not gone on the Studio Ghibli,
I think it's Ghibli.
Ghibli.
Yeah.
That's a funny word.
I know.
Train, like, I understand that people adore it and it's got, fanatics. I've not been especially appreciative of it. Like, I recognize it's one of those things I recognize that it's great, and then it just doesn't move me that much.
But it's not necessarily your bag.
Yeah. But I'm interested in the themes that you're talking about, and I also like animation is fine with me. Like, I've never been a snob about, like.
The other thing about this is, again, it's an easy show to watch. As I said, each episode is 26 minutes is the longest one of of them. So, like, it's pretty easy to digest. And what I found myself doing was that I was like, okay, I'll start this. Oh, I guess I'll keep watching. Oh my God, I got to finish. Like, there was some narrative.
I was the same way with Selling Sunset through most of which it's funny, like, I having mentioned that, I'm like, I guess I could have put that in science fiction. Like, it's otherworldly. The real estate world of Los Angeles is not
That's true.
real.
Yeah.
But yes, so that sounds good, Dan.
Okay. Anna, what's your next one?
Gen V, which is a spinoff of The Boys, which I wanted to talk about last year, and I will push for maybe discussion once the next season comes out. Okay. And it is loosely based on a comics run from The Boys, but very loosely. And it has to do with Godolphin University, the students of Godolphin University, which is also called God U. It's a school for superheroes. And it is a lot like The Boys in that it is ultra violent and gross. It is really takes, like, whatever, Amazon's limits are for that stuff. Let's see. It has featured in The Boys, there was a tiny man who got tiny for a sex act, and that went horribly wrong.
Oh no.
And there is a somewhat similar tiny person sex act, like tiny, not like, I'm not using
I get it. Yeah.
Like 1 inch high. Tiny.
Yeah. I know where you were going with.
In Gen V, that does not end horribly. There's other sex acts that end horribly, actually. There's a particularly bloody one that would be very unpleasant for men to watch, I think. And I'm not a huge fan of the ultra violence in this, but this is so cartoonish, and it's also weirdly a commentary on violence, and meta doesn't always make things okay, but I float. No,
but sometimes it does also. Yeah. That's fair.
And the story here is about how parents fuck you up. It is. It's about, like, the ways that children are failed by their parents, and parents doing their best.
Yeah.
But what it is that children want and need out of parental figures, and kind of found families and families of choice. And also there's much as in The Boys, there's a critique of capitalism.
No. Really?
I mean,
let me ask you a question.
Yeah.
Oh, let me ask you a question, Anna, which is, I've seen the first season in, like, one episode of The Boys, and we've talked before, like, The Boys is so cynical that, like, it's tough for me. Do you need to have watched The Boys to enjoy Gen V?
No.
Okay, good to know.
And I would say also it is somewhat less cynical.
Okay.
I also think The Boys kind of comes around to a little bit less cynicism.
Okay. All right.
By the end of, I guess it's season 2 that they're on.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think perhaps it's because it's younger people.
Yeah.
Who have the cynicism of youth for the first part of it. The kind of, like, the poser nihilism of an adolescent.
Yeah. I don't know what you're talking about, Anna. I've never seen that before in my life as a university professor. Nope.
The Catcher in the Rye style nihilism.
Oh God.
Like, fuck you, man, adults.
Yeah.
But then they become and then, much as adolescent kind of works, they become very idealistic and want to save the world, and are then frustrated in their efforts to save the world by adults. I think that's not necessarily a spoiler to say that's the kind of arc of the season. That's the arc of adolescence. There's some great performances. Arnold Schwarzenegger's kid is one of the leads.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
And he does not look like Arnold. He looks like Maria Shriver.
Maria Shriver?
Yeah.
Well, that's probably good for everyone concerned.
Probably. And there are some characters that show up from The Boys, but not very many. Yeah, I think I'm grateful for it because I think it's always good as a grown-up person to revisit some of that drama of adolescence, especially that arc of cynicism. It reminds me in that way of Buffy, believe it or not. Like, in the sense of Buffy, I mean, was never very that cynical, right?
She had her moments, but no, she wasn't
But there is a sense of like, we're going to have to change the world if the adults aren't going to.
Yeah.
And as frustrating as it is to be a college professor, especially right now, like, I think that the thing that I can come back to, even when I see college students being idiots, is I would rather them be idealistic idiots than not
than
just be idiots.
Yes, exactly. No. That's a totally fair point. And by the way, just to be clear, I have no problem with college students being idiots on this point. The only way you learn is by being wrong. Yeah. And then eventually, every once in a while, you turn out to be right. And you guys got to be grateful for those moments when that happens.
I will also say Gen V does, much as with The Boys, there's pretty explicit anti-Trump or critiques of Trumpism and nativism embedded in the show. There was and one of the funnier things is the Soup Lives Matter.
Did you say, soup as in superhero? Oh, God.
Yeah, Soup's Lives Matter.
Okay, that is funny. Yeah. I like that. That's witty. Yeah.
Which is, I mean, clearly a critique of the white nativists, all lives matter. It's not a parody of Black Lives Matter. I just want to be very, very clear. And there's a red-hatted superhero that wears his hat says "Make America Safe Again," which I think is Homelander's thing too. And I would recommend it to others if you have a strongish stomach. There was a time that I was going to sit down to watch it, and I was eating, and I saw where it was going, and was like,
and you stopped eating?
Nope. Although I will say one of the things that's funny, and this is in the lead that I chose, is one of the characters is a schizophrenic young man who, when he is triggered, sees the world as puppets.
Oh,
he literally sees the world as puppets. So there are a couple of fight scenes that are done with Muppet-style puppets.
Oh, okay. I might need to watch that.
And so when he rips the head off the Muppet, it's just like red glitter rather than blood, and like fuzzy, and there's not there's not internal organs. There's like fluff. And that is hilarious. But then when it goes back to regular vision, you see
it's horrible.
Yeah.
Right.
You see the aftermath in regular vision.
Yeah. Fair enough.
Right. So the body horror is not. There's parts of it that are hilarious because it's puppets.
We should say that Gen V is available on Amazon Prime,
yes.
correct?
Yes. It is.
It's important. Okay.
Your turn.
All right. I am also grateful for, this is a novel, and it didn't come out last year. I think it might have come out the year before that or the year before that. It is Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow by Gabrielle Zevin. And it's only I think it's on the sci-fi border is the way I would put it. I'm not entirely sure it's sci-fi, but I'm still including it here. Her novel is about two estranged friends, Sam Masser and Sadie Green, who grew up in California and have a complicated relationship, which I know sounds crazy for 18-year-olds, but it's complicated, who then bump into each other later on at the Harvard T Stop while they're still in college. They are both into video games, and soon the two of them, along with Sam's roommate Marks, develop a video game called Ichigo that is an overnight success. The three of them, as a result, create a company called Unfair Games to develop even more video games. But it is safe to say that as they grow up, petty grievances and deeper traumas make Sam and Sadie's collaboration more and more difficult. And it's a question of how they navigate that. A couple of reasons why I'm grateful for it. The first is the almost entirely platonic relationship between Sam and Sadie. maybe I'm wrong about this, but like it's unusual in literature, I think more generally, for two people of the, same age who are heterosexual and of different sexes to have a relationship as deep as the one they have without it becoming a sexual relationship. And so in some ways, that was nice to see. It wasn't that I necessarily was into that going into it, but like it was wonderful to see the relationship flower and also occasionally get scarred over time. And the other reason I'm grateful for it was the games. And this is really funny, Anna, because neither you nor I are gamers. I am not a video gamer. But Zevin's description of the games and like the inventiveness of them were actually incredibly fascinating to me. I was less interested in playing the video games than in reading about how the video games were developed and the ideas behind some of these video games. And I know that sounds crazy, but it was really very compelling.
I find video games very interesting, and I do believe that they are a legitimate narrative art.
Yeah.
I just wish that I could have, like, to put it in gamerese, I think a mod implanted in me so that I could play them, so that I was good enough at video games to play them. And instead, like, I just missed that part of my, development, my hand-eye coordination and whatnot. I just can't. They're not fun for me. So I don't.
You
play
and me
them.
both, Anna. Like, yeah, that's how I feel.
But this sounds fascinating, though.
Yeah, no, in some ways reading this book, like, how occasionally, like, I think there are YouTube videos of people playing video games. This is much better than that, would be the way I would put it.
I have no interest in those. If I'm going to do video games, I want to play them. But yeah, so.
But
would you recommend it to others? Yes.
I would recommend it to others. I will warn readers, there is one pivotal and violent plot point that might be a little bit disconcerting to some readers. But I will say that Zevin sticks the landing. It is an extremely satisfying read. And also, this was a read, it was actually very funny. I think part of the reason I read this book was that it was not just that Erica, my wife, said you should read this book, but like multiple numbers of colleagues said, I think you would really like this book. And I don't know if you have this occasion, like maybe we're both hardwired this way. We're like this sort of oppositional thing of, no, I don't want to read it. Why are you telling me that? No, I don't want to read it. I can pick my own books. I'll read this. Oh, this is okay.
I was that way with Ted Lasso.
Like, yes, exactly. Yeah, yep.
Recommend something to me too much, and I will just be like, "Fuck you! I hate it already."
But leave it this way: I wholeheartedly recommend this book. Right. Yeah,
it's an interesting perspective to have the people being like us and being like, and this is the stuff we recommend. Actually, I think what makes this really okay with me in some ways is that no, this is what I'm grateful for. Like. Because, by the way, a workaround, if someone really wants to get me interested in something, if you talk about how much you like it without recommending it to me.
That's a fair point. Yeah. And this was the opposite, that people kept recommending it to me without talking about it enthusiastically. And so you're right. That's a fair way of putting it. But I really genuinely, like, this book was... it was a book that I couldn't put down, which is not something I say about a lot of novels.
I hear you would like this as a challenge, but if someone says, I really liked it, I'm curious.
Like, well, I like you, so that makes it interesting. Yes, I think you're right. Yeah, that's a good point. But I think we stumbled into something important here, Anna. And, all right, what is your third and last thing you are thankful for this year?
It is not strictly a genre property. It is a YouTube channel about genre. I've mentioned
it's a meta genre.
It's a meta suggestion or a meta it's not a suggestion. Never mind. Take that back.
No.
Not a suggestion at all.
Don't watch it under no circumstances.
It's a YouTube channel called New Rockstars that has two sub channels called the Break Room and the Deep Dive. And I've mentioned that channel on our podcast before. They are one of many kind of recap networks, and I started watching them because, as we discussed, we both love genre, but neither of us have like super deep, like I can cite the comic book and the novelization and like all like this comic number XY.
See that Easter egg? That Easter egg is from episode 561 of this other show that whatever. Yeah,
I don't have that kind of deep knowledge about any particular property, but I'm always fascinated by the connections that exist. And there are several different YouTubers who do that kind of thing. And I don't know how I kind of settled on New Rockstars. Actually, I do. it is the convention of a lot of these recap shows that the person hosting it and doing the voiceover is not visible. Like they just show clips, and then
they show clips or like trailers or whatever. Yeah.
And then there's a voiceover. And new Rockstars, for whatever reason, direction they've taken, and I only recently heard one of them mention it, like in passing, that they have like there's a person on screen talking.
Okay, fair enough.
And I have this weird parasocial relationship with Eric Voss. If you're out there, like. He is my guide. He does almost all the Marvel stuff. He did Loki. He is, for instance, like I know he's about to be a new father. Like, aww. And he's talked about it, in like the months leading up to. I think the baby's due like around Christmas. I can't believe I know this stuff, but. Like he talked about some like Loki. He loved Loki, and he loved all the themes of family and friendship and whatnot. And he made it very personal. And also, he did for the summer. He did deep dives on Spielberg movies, and Spielberg has a very father figure fixation.
Well, mother and then father, but yes, yeah.
And Eric Voss talked about his relationship with his dad and like how that informed how he views these things. And I guess I'm particularly grateful for his stuff, although I think they also do a really good job, better than other channels, of having not just white guys. He happens to be a white guy that I'm a fan of, but they're also non-white dudes.
You're allowed to like white guys on. I just want to be very clear about that.
And the channel in general.
White guys matter. No, sorry. Never mind.
Yeah, I don't. Yeah, sure. We just don't need to be reminded of that one.
Yes, fair enough. Yes.
I'm not going to clip that out and put it on, the internet. Dan,
I'm very grateful for that, Anna.
I'm not going to make that my ringtone. Just the when you say I'm right about something. Those are my future ringtones. And let's see if I can say anything else about it. It's mostly just fun. I mean, this one guy I have a strange, quasi-intimate parasocial relationship with, but for the most part, they're just fun deep dives. And I especially like that this guy in particular is willing to go out on a limb with some of his theories about these shows. Like, he had this whole thing about whether or not the key lime pie in Loki was Soylent Green. And
wow. Not a bad theory. Okay. I don't think I just can't think that Mobius would like the pie that much.
But I appreciate being willing to go out on a limb, Yeah,
totally fair.
So I recommend New Rockstars. Then also he has his not personal sub channel, but he also hosts the deep dives, and he does like 30, 45-minute analysis of particular movies, including he did The Thing recently, which you might want to. We both loved The
Carpenter's
Thing.
The Thing. Yeah, of course.
So you might want to take a look at that. He has this whole theory about why Kurt Russell's character is not a thing. Like there's, debate about whether or not Keith David or, Kurt Russell are thinged at the end.
Yeah.
And he argues that Keith David is and Kurt Russell isn't. He has a whole theory behind
Interesting. Okay.
Definitely, obviously recommending it to others. And Dan, I also think you would benefit from something like this. I'm here. I am recommending, but
see,
I don't know.
No, I'm not going to listen to it, Anna. Okay. I'm not going to watch it. No, I might take a look at it. That's fair enough.
I recommended. How did this get made to you? Damn it!
You did. Yep. Hold on. Get your ringtone ready. You were right about that, Anna. You were right about that, Anna. Yep. Fair enough.
Interrupting your scheduled program for some capitalism. Capitalism break is over, even if capitalism isn't. Back to the show. Okay, Dan, your third and final entry for Spacegiving.
I am grateful for 2 Star Trek Next Generation episodes, the mentoring episodes. One is called The First Duty, and one is called actually Lower Decks. So why am I picking these? So I'm going to issue a small spoiler alert for those of you who have not finished Season 4 of Star Trek Lower Decks, which is the animated show. The overarching plot of this Season 4 goes into Next Generation's canon to revisit characters that appeared in these 2 episodes. And so after the season was over, for some reason I decided to watch these 2 episodes again to sort of refresh my memory of them. And you know what? They hold up, and also it was interesting to watch them again. So the first duty, Anna, I don't know if you necessarily have seen this one. It's the one where we see Wesley Crusher in the academy. Our favorite writers, or some of our favorite writers, Ron Moore and Naren Shankar, actually wrote the first duty. Naren Shankar then goes on to help run The Expanse, and they're both involved in For All Mankind. And there are some lovely small touches in that episode. For example, at Starfleet Academy, people knock on doors. I know that sounds weird, but like you're used to like doors opening and closing on their own. And it's actually kind of clever. But the thing that really hit me in both of these episodes was that they're both about mentoring. So in the first duty, it's about Picard, trying to counsel Wesley Crusher after a training accident at Starfleet Academy, in which he may or may not have played a role that he's somewhat not transparent about. And Picard is really hard on him at various times, but I would argue justifiably so, and I won't give anything more in the episode. In the Lower Decks episode, we actually revisit one of the characters, the smaller characters from the first duty, in which we see Worf as a mentor to her, and he is just amazing in that. Basically, both he and Patrick Stewart, Picard, are sort of trying to help a character named Ensign Sito, sort of cope with various challenges. And the way they play their scenes with her, and the way they give it a weight in terms of asking her to do something that winds up being incredibly dangerous, is in retrospect heartbreaking. And this might be because, frankly, Anna, like when I watched these shows live, I was probably closer to Ensign Sito's age, and now I'm much, much closer to Picard's age. In fact, I might very well be older than Picard at this point. But those hit me in a different way, and we don't think about mentoring all that much. And both of these episodes are great in that they do a good job of sort of crafting relationships between characters that viewers wouldn't automatically know about if they had watched the show. They're sort of peripheral characters, and it's a wonderfully sort of done way. We see this between Wesley Crusher and a character named Nicholas Locarno in the first duty, and then in Lower Decks, we see this, which is an episode that was shot from the vantage point of like ensigns, essentially, and in some ways is the inspiration for the animated show. The relationship between those characters is also good. I would not necessarily recommend it to others unless you've actually liked Star Trek. Like this is, again, if you're into Lower Decks and you're like, oh yeah, I remember these, rewatch the episodes. I think they're pretty good. I think they hold up. And I think that's it on that one. Oh, the one other thing, in the first duty episode, which is going back to the Academy, Ray Walston plays a character named Boothby, who is the gardener at Starfleet Academy, and apparently a longtime friend of Jean-Luc Picard from when he was at the Academy. And one of the amusing things about it is that there is a conversation that is clearly designed to reference something that happened in a previous episode, in Picard's past life, and you kind of wonder, were they ever going to get to that? And they never do in the show. I think they are going to in a comic book called Picard's Academy, but like I kind of want them just have them make the prequel as a television show or something.
I always feel like I should get more into Star Trek.
Well, Next Generation, because you like the original.
I like the original,
right?
And that's one of my laundry folder shows.
Yeah.
But my mom was a Picard person, and
interesting.
Yeah. Oh, she loved Jean-Luc. And I do too. I think probably my appreciation of him has grown as I've gotten closer to his age.
Yeah.
But I do love Lower Decks, and that is something that I can put on my radar for like next time I'm like, on my Friday nights where I just stare at the Netflix queue and just like flip.
The one thing I will say is that I think anyone's appreciation of Lower Decks gets deepened the more you understand Next Generation, because that's really the primary show that Lower Decks is riffing off of. Yeah. And smartly riffs off of some of the better shows, but also some of the truly goofy, sillier episodes. That's one of the best things about Lower Decks, is that it makes fun of the stuff that is worthy of making fun of.
And I sometimes forget that the TNG can be very self-aware of its goofiness in a fun way. So, Dan, I do have a question for you. It has nothing to do with IR, but
oh, okay, yeah.
Do you pick up a theme in your choices? Can you bring us a theme for your Spacegiving?
Honestly, Anna, I think there is a theme among the three choices, which is that much like these holidays, I am thankful for the kind of sci-fi that offers a sense of hope when confronted with despair. And in all three of these properties, some bad things happen. And, it's not that necessarily everything works out in the end. It doesn't. But it's the idea that there can be a better life in the future. And I did like that.
I am laughing because I know what you're going to go do after you finish taping this show.
Oh, yes. Listeners, in case you're wondering, and who knows, by the time this episode comes out, I will have been canceled and resigned in spectacular fashion. I am supposed to speak to the wider student body here at Tufts about the Israel-Gaza conflict and the international ramifications for it. And you know what? I think I'm going to crack it.
Yeah.
I think in 7 minutes, it's going to totally work it out.
Everyone will be on the same page. I think maybe you should have Erica have a TNG queued up for when you get home.
Yes. Not a bad. Yes.
Just have her have the popcorn and the remote ready for you.
Yeah. That's not the worst idea. Let's put it that way. But that said, I am going into it with hope.
Good. Glad.
Yeah. What about you, Anna? Is there a theme in your choice?
Well, this has been a pop quiz for me a little bit, Professor, because I didn't prep for our show as much as I usually do. But having given it a second thought, and then maybe another second, kind of zoning out while you were talking.
Listeners, Anna yawned while I was talking, okay? It wasn't just zoned out. I totally bored the crap out of her. Keep going.
Now, I just get tired. I think earnestness might be a theme for my picks. And
yeah,
you and I had a discussion when I came to visit you about how age can actually make you more soft-hearted, right?
Yeah, absolutely. God, yeah.
It is not you're a liberal when you're younger and a conservative when you're older necessarily.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I mean, I've always been fucking, commie pinko simp, but I've been a cynical commie pinko simp, right? and been a sarcastic one too, I guess. And I think as I've gotten older, I have come to appreciate earnestness a lot more than I used to.
Mm-hmm.
I think that cynicism and sarcasm are important tools in the tool bag of both activism and just human expression. But one of the reasons I can't get mad about people saying students especially saying dumb things online or having a protest sign that is out of bounds in some way is I'm in favor of people being earnest to some degree. I'd rather you be earnest than talk about something I disagree with you about in good faith, knowing you really genuinely believe something I disagree with, than someone who only was believing something for the convenience. And I think I actually even mean kind of extreme views. I am willing to talk with someone who believes something extreme if that's if that's what
they actually believe, rather than it's an instrumental thing or
yeah.
No, that's fair. And yeah, I don't know if I would click that far, but I
said pretty extreme. I don't know. There's a limit.
Yeah.
There's a limit where I'm I don't even want to platform you and
Yeah, I mean, if someone says white guys matter, you're not going to want to talk to them. But no, it's I agree with that. And also, I will say this: the other thing, and honestly, this is why I love teaching, is it's the enthusiasm for the ideas. Mm-hmm. That's one of the best things about my job, and to be earnest for a second. It is honestly wonderful to see students sort of get exposed to new ideas, weigh them, and be enthusiastic about them. That's great.
I agree.
Oh, what's that?
Same thing. It is, what? It is just debris. We're not going to talk about what kind of debris.
Yeah.
Kind of
generic debris.
Generic debris.
Generic debris.
It's asteroids, maybe. Mm-hmm. It's the debris field. We have a debris field where we talk about stuff that we didn't get a chance to talk about already. In this case, perhaps things we are
smaller things.
Small G grateful for.
Yeah.
Small T things.
I only have 2 things. Anna, what do you got? How many?
I really enjoyed the season 2 of Wheel of Time. It's hard to believe that Rosamund Pike is also Gone Girl, which is, I love that movie. And
it's so good. Yeah.
She is amazing in it. And of course, this is a very different character, and it's also, she's, close to my age now, and like she's a lead in this mature like presence in the movie or in the TV show, and where she was like Gone Girl, this terrible character, one of the best villains really of like
fantastic, are you kidding?
Movies, I think.
Yeah.
And I have not read the entire Wheel of Time series because I think there's like 20 books. I want to use the word literally.
A lot of books.
Like there's a lot of books, and I've read like the first 5 and really enjoyed them. And fantasy for me is especially, it can be comforting in times of trouble. I find deep like high fantasy that are complete different worlds to be an escape. And I think that they had very, very smartly adapted what is an unwieldy text, and I just really enjoyed her especially.
Excellent. Okay. I wanted just a quick shout out for opening theme songs to 2 shows that one is pretty good and somewhat interesting. One was frankly not all that good, but nonetheless, the theme songs were great. One was for Silo, which we talked about in a previous episode. And I will say this, I'm glad the strike is over. I'm actually thankful that the strike is over. I forgot. I think it's the first time we talked about this.
Put that on the list for sure.
Yes, thank God the actors and strike, and before that the writer's strike was over. We're going to have new content to eventually talk about on it. But I do want to see Silo season 2.
That made your list before mine.
I know, it was surprising. There was a labor accomplishment on it, and I'm thankful for it. But Silo was great. I also want to say, although I did not think the show was terribly good in almost every other way, the theme song for Ahsoka, about Ahsoka Tano in the Star Wars universe, is I played that a fair amount, like as background music. It's quite gripping.
Along with the Buffy.
Yes.
Buffy.
Yes.
The Strange New World.
The Subspace Rhapsody. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Dan, if you like the Silo opening theme, you should really try the Westworld opening theme because they are
I will have to give it a whirl.
Very, very similar. But they're both beautiful. I used to, when there was a time in the 90s where every band sounded like Pavement, and that used to be something people would make fun of, and I'd be like, well, I like Pavement, so
there you go. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I don't mind everything sounding like. I will also put on this list just for now, since it's top of mind. I watched the movie Dr. Sleep for the first time after we did our Shining episode. And it is very straightforwardly about alcoholism and recovery. And it is... both the book and the movie are flawed in interesting ways, I would say. And it's funny, like I can't recommend them, like unless you're really interested in those themes. Like I'm not sure how much you'll love them. Personally, though, I am also interested in. I tend to love King's misfires as a writer. Like he when he screws up a book, like it can be very interesting, and like the villains.
Misfires can be interesting.
The villains in Dr. Sleep are some of like, it's like the weirdest, worst, like, like it's a family of like energy vampires who travel around in RVs. Like,
okay, sure. All right. As one does, Anna. I mean,
it's the art detail that he gets really interested in. Like he clearly got fascinated by people who like are nomads, which I also find fascinating. But like, it's hard to make them really villainous. Like,
fair enough. Yeah.
Anyway, so, but I personally, as someone in recovery and as a big King fan, I did get something out of those things. So I'm grateful that they exist, both the book and the movie. And I like, and the movie's interesting because it apparently several people who worked on the movie got sober, like kind of
that in and of itself is good.
Movie.
Yes.
And Mike Flanagan, I think Mike Flanagan and Ewan McGregor are both sober today, and I don't know if they started that movie sober. I think Ewan McGregor was, but I'm very Mike Flanagan is like the in-house Netflix horror auteur.
Right.
And he's the one who directed.
I think he's responsible for like Fall of the House of Usher.
Yes, which I just started, and it's creepy. I don't know if I can give it I can't give it a full review, but I will say it's definitely creepy.
The other thing that I should say, the last thing I should say that I'm thankful for is the animated film adaptation of Nimona. We talked about Nimona, the book, or the graphic novel for this podcast. We recorded it before the Netflix film came out. And I have to say, the Netflix film did the book justice. And in fact, I think cleaned up some things on the plot side that I think actually made it in some ways far more resonant. And it was really, a joy to watch. And, I'm also thankful for it because it got me closer to my daughter, Lauren, who recommended this in the first place, recommended that we talk about Nimona. And so, anytime I can watch something that my daughter is enthusiastic about and also get into it is, as a parent, it's a wonderful thing.
That's very sweet. A cool thing about the movie for me is that an old friend of mine who got sober around the same time as I did is now a soundtrack producer in Hollywood, and he did the songs for that.
Oh, for Nimona.
And
excellent.
He's an interesting story too, because he was a touring musician and indie rock guy. That's how I knew him, and found touring to be difficult after he got sober. And
yes, I can imagine. Yeah, fair enough.
And it's become this pretty successful. He also wrote the themes. He wrote the theme song for my old podcast. He wrote the theme song for Jake Tapper's news show.
Okay.
He's written. He's kind of been all over, but he's starting to, I think, emerge more like his doing not just kind of. Of course, he puts his art into everything, but not just like jingles. He's doing much more. Like substantive artistic expression.
Serious stuff. Yeah.
Serious stuff.
Yeah.
Yes. I think that's about it, unless you have anything you want to add.
I will add one thing because I thought you wanted to add it, and I think we agree on this. For All Mankind.
Oh, yeah. Well, too early to put it on the Spacegiving list, but I'm glad it's
That's
back.
fair. Believe it this way, what I'm grateful for, because I'm grateful for this for every season of For All Mankind, is every season they always open with like this 5-minute montage of these are the news stories you missed in the decade that we've leapt forward. And it is always hysterical to me because it's a mix of, things that actually happened, but because it's an alternative history, the slight tweaking of the alternative history, I always crack up when I...
So what was your favorite parts for this one? Because I liked seeing John Lennon play the Super Bowl because it's nice that he didn't
was hysterical.
Nice that he didn't get deaded, right?
Yeah, exactly. Two things, I think. First, I don't know why. Clearly, they don't like Michael Jordan, or they have weird feelings about Michael Jordan. They have, there's a headline about Michael Jordan winning the World Series with the Seattle Mariners, which I thought was really funny. And also, I got to admit, it's weird. I never cared about this, but I got a little sad. There was a headline about John F. Kennedy Jr. running for the Senate. And that, I felt sad seeing that, which is funny. I never cared one way or the other, but that was a little sad.
I have a couple things to say about it. One is that I will just feel like I want to remind people that one of my big criticisms of For All Mankind is that it's not a big enough deal that abortion and reproductive choice are legislated in that show. Like the ERA passes and women have reproductive freedom in that timeline. It's not a question. And I feel like that should be a bigger deal. But okay.
Yeah.
What I missed in that timeline is I really thought they were going to have Kurt Cobain live, and I would like to. I want to be in the timeline. I want to be in the timeline where Kurt Cobain lives and gets sober and officiates. I don't know if you saw Kurt Cobain's daughter and Tony Hawk's son got married last month.
Oh,
and it was a wedding officiated by Michael Stipe.
Oh,
it was the most 90s.
It's so adorable in 90s. That's meant for us. Why weren't we invited, Otto?
I know.
You should have invited everyone for Gen X. Yeah.
But wouldn't it have been wonderful if Kurt could have been there, right?
I want you to imagine, though, also, would Kurt have wound up playing the Super Bowl?
No.
Yeah.
Although I don't know. I mean, would REM play the Super Bowl? Maybe. You know what I like to envision in the future, or in the timeline where Kurt Cobain survived? I got reminded, because of that wedding, I wound up going down a kind of Nirvana rabbit hole. And one of the things I did was re-listen to, or for the first time in a long time, their Unplugged session.
Which is amazing.
One of the best live albums ever.
Yeah.
Highly recommend. Yeah. There is a oral history of that, which is fascinating, on the Ringer. And I was reminded that one of the things that he did was promote other bands. He was very serious about it.
I think they only played one of their own songs. Actually.
No, they played a few of their own songs, but they went.
They drew a lot from other. Yeah, they were doing covers.
And they were always talking about other bands that they liked, or wearing T-shirts from bands that they liked, and having guests in the band from other bands they liked. So what I like to imagine is that Kurt Cobain went on doing that for his career, and kept lifting up new music that he loved. Because I think that's something that's, it's one of the things I like about Stephen King, even though I think he sometimes goes overboard on his recommendations. I find that very endearing when someone uses their fame and their influence to be a fan of other people's stuff. Mm-hmm. All right, we should wrap. You have to go do you have to go talk about.
It's going to work out great, Anna. I am very confident.
Is it the conflict in Gaza? What is the official term?
This is actually a problem, I think.
I
keep saying I keep saying either the Israel-Hamas conflict or war or the Gaza war. But the issue is that it's hard to describe actually because I haven't seen a common nomenclature.
It's as with all language, you are illustrating your opinion or your perspective in your word choice.
You frame it. Yes, that's true.
Yeah.
That you frame it.
I feel like
and I don't. Yeah.
If I was going to try to go as objective as possible, I would say conflict in Gaza.
Yeah, possible. Except it's pretty warlike. So,
it is pretty warlike.
I'm
on the it's war side. I'm just
right. Yeah.
Now, do you have to actually? Oh, sorry. I was going to start asking you questions, and you know what? Not going to do it. Let's keep talking about sci-fi some more.
I am thankful for that, Anna.
We're both on Blue Sky. I am at Anna Marie Cox. He is at Dan Dresner. Dan has a Substack.
I do. It's called Dresner's World. As Anna says it's vital reading at this point in time. So, there you go.
There you go for your poster. And also, Jess reads it, which I found it recently. Our sometimes production person, Jess. She sent me a text. She was like, "Did you read Dan's latest newsletter?" And I was like,
Fair enough.
Of course I did, Jess. Which one? Anyway, she's a fan. I'm also on Instagram, and I recently posted the most adorable picture I've ever posted, which I will now send to Dan. It was of Bram and Exley cuddling.
Of course.
Also have an important update for our listeners that Karen, the genius who puts our show together and makes us both sound smarter than we deserve, her pup,
thank you, Karen.
Alwyn, is doing better. He had a little bit of a scare and needed some surgery, but it looks like he is on the mend. So anyone who wants to send out positive thoughts to Alwyn, please do. Anything else, Dan?
I think that's it. I think we want to wish all of our listeners a happy Thanksgiving. And, may you be grateful for lots of things. It doesn't just have to be sci-fi.
And we are grateful for you. Yeah. Until next time.
Keep this channel open for more.